let me call upon our five highlights commentators. They will have about 2 minutes each, and let's go through them one at a time here. I think we have five lined up for you. First, I'd like to call on Dr. Martin Frick, Deputy Special Envoy to the Food Systems Summit. Martin, are you there?
I'm here and I'm ready to go.
Excellent. Go ahead, Martin, please.
Thanks very much. So I was in two breakout sessions, one on human rights, one on nutrition, the first 1,000 days of the life of a child. And it was really interesting. On the human rights point, agency is the most important thing, training women to give them a voice, but also creating all the community that is ready to listen. And that is particularly true when it comes to planning decisions and when it comes to allocation of finance. Then a second thing that came up in the nutrition, the first 1,000 days, is the possibility to use biodiversity to find adequate staple crops that are better in nutritional value than what has been used. Iron, for example. There is a possibility, and anemia, for example, is widespread, can be addressed with these solutions. Then school meals, not surprising, but what was the new aspect for me, at least, on school meals is that it's not just helping the children to develop and develop their full potential, but it's also a fantastic entry point to talk to the communities and get knowledge via the children into the community. Last bit, and I saved that for last because it is on both ends, on the human rights side, interesting, and on the nutrition side discussed, is livestock. Access of women to livestock, the possibility to have backyard poultry, for example, can dramatically increase incomes, can dramatically increase the nutrition. And Don made the point and said, it makes a difference whether men or women are managing the livestock, because we see when it's women, the access of the children for nutrition coming from these animals is better. Then last point, I said this would be the last point, but I forgot one, is data comes up everywhere. Women need data access, UN agencies need big data access to really monitor, and there's a common understanding that you only make progress when you can measure it. That's it from my end. Thanks, Rick.
Excellent, and thank you very much for doing that, Martin, and fascinating conversations. Next, I'll call on Dr. Bettino Prado, Senior Coordinator of the Smallholder and Agri SME Finance and Investment Network. Bettina, over to you, please. What did you hear?
A lot of interesting things. Thank you, Rick. So I was in a session on women's movements and agency, and then two on financial services. I was only able to listen at the very beginning to the group on women's movements, but I would say there were two themes. I would call them leverage and connect. Lots of conversation around leveraging new opportunities, sort of new platforms emerging, particularly around women's entrepreneurs, opportunities to bring the agenda of food systems there, opportunities around digital data to really amplify the reach of some of these platforms and to bring in new voices. Also very much leverage the existence of many women's movements that are not necessarily focused on food issues. What are the opportunities to bring this agenda to their existing networks to leverage their capabilities? When it comes to financial services, again, I would say two main themes. One is mainstream gender. The other one is educate. So quite a few thoughts around the need to really boldly mainstream the agenda of gender, make it really tangible for all kinds of financial institutions, upstream, downstream, not just at the retail end, including at the international level. And then educate financial institutions about women and about agriculture, but also educate women about finance. Women's entrepreneurs, help women become more bankable. And not just in terms of financial literacy, but really education about finance and business. And finally, there were two very important points around financial services where the need for new actions, bold actions was underlined. One is land, not just policy, but also social norms around land. And the other one is insurance, an initiative perhaps to really scale up access to microinsurance, specifically climate-related microinsurance for women. With that, over to you, Rick.
Thank you, Bettina. Excellent summary. And again, another fascinating set of discussions, it sounds like. Next, let's go to Dr. Maximo Torero-Cullen. He's the Chief Economist and Assistant Director General for the Economic and Social Development Department of FAO. Maximo, over to you, please. What did you hear?
Thank you very much, Rick. I was in 3 sessions. On the first one, the discussion was around access to assets and how we can make more equal access to assets, financial and digital. So this brought the concept of technology, also the digital technologies, and how women can have bigger access. And that is related to land, of course, and titles and property rights, and how we can differentiate and have access to male and female when we give a title. But it's also linked to access to income to be able to have access to digital technologies, for example, cellular phones, and financial, which is also linked to literacy, as was mentioned before. So again, the importance of access to assets to be able to empower and effectively convert the empowerment of women into something that will return in an income to them so that they can keep moving forward. The second was on education. And on education, the major topic was the importance of access to education, but especially to reduce desertion from education. And also to include vocational training so that women can know what else to do and create capacity so that when they do their next move, they will be having certain capacities to be able to get access to certain jobs. But in terms of the desertion, I think it's very important to mention here the importance to look differently to the calendar of a female versus the calendar of a male, meaning the whole age calendar. For a female, the period where the desertion is the highest is between primary and secondary. And that's where I assume mechanisms or incentives needs to put in place to assure that the female will stay in school so that we minimize desertion rates and therefore can benefit from vocational training and other types of training. The third element was, and the third group was more on the importance of empowerment of women, but especially on gender and gender disaggregated data. That was raised in 2 of the sessions I was, and there was a mention that today there is an improvement toward gender disaggregated data, but still it's pretty rudimentary. For example, trade data is not gender disaggregated. It's very difficult to know how much is female, male. Also, production data is complex to get gender disaggregated. There is a huge effort right now going on in the 20 by 30 initiative in which we're trying to do household survey data gender disaggregated, but there is a lot of gaps. And that's extremely important because it will help in the process of policy decision making to be able to understand what are the impacts of the different policies to empower women and how effective they have been. Unless we have good gender disaggregated data, it will be a complex issue. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Maximo. Another wonderful conversation, and thanks for doing that. And that reminds me, shout out and thank you to Beth Bechtel for joining us today as well. So thanks, Beth. I haven't had a chance to talk to you, but thanks for being here. Next, let's go to Ms. Ruramiso Mashamba, a farmer from Zimbabwe and CEO of Manandi Africa. Ruramiso, are you there?
Hi, Rick. It's Robin, and I think actually Vermiso was here, and she's been here all session, but in the way of such things, she's just lost her connection from Zimbabwe. So I can bring a few highlights that she flagged in terms of the discussion. She sent me a quick text as things were dodging out, but to say how impressive and how important this issue is, and that we need ways to connect women to markets that are concrete and work with women directly, not just in aggregate, but get to women specifically. And that means equity and access to things like finance. So when setting up programming, we may need to do some acceleration programs for women, but we also need to make sure that women have a mandate to get equal access to resources like entrepreneurship training, like agricultural extension, that will allow them to have a full participation in the funds that are already going to agriculture. This is a shortcoming. And on top of that, we need to do some specific acceleration that gets to women directly. And I'll hand it back to you and Marianne. It's a pleasure to see everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for stepping in on behalf of Ruramiso with the technical problem. Next, let's go to Ms. Marianne Sayuk, Public Affairs Lead at East West Seed in the Philippines. Marianne, over to you.
Thank you, Rick. I was actually in 3 breakout sessions, one on proper maternal services, which unfortunately I left when they were just when they were just scoping the problem. So I couldn't say much on the practical solutions. I joined the 2 breakout rooms on entrepreneurship training, and in both rooms, clearly there was a need for entrepreneurship training for women in agriculture. And this entrepreneurship training could be done through a mentorship program provided by the private sector or by NGOs, where successful agricultural entrepreneurs would share their knowledge and experience, no, in agriculture entrepreneurship. And and especially in countries, I think these privatized extension services would be very useful. And to complement this extension entrepreneurship training, the government should provide a loan window for women entrepreneurs, interest-free and collateral-free. So in the entrepreneurship training, farm business skills, access to the market, farm recording, I think they should all be there in that program. Over to you, Rick.
And thank you, Mary Ann. It was excellent. And thank you for doing that for us. And in general, thank you, Martin, Bettina, Maximo, Rumiso, even though it was Robin that reported, Rumiso was doing some work too, and Mary Ann for providing this great recap. Very much appreciated.